Friends, today we are going to talk about bird migration. But before I say anything about bird migration, I would like to tell you about what is migration. Migration is considered as to and fro movement from one place to other place. These movements are regular. It can be seasonal or it can be altitudinal, or there are different ways in which animals move from one place to other place. Many groups of animals show this type of movements. Mammals, birds and butterflies are known to show these movements. Among these, birds have fascinated mankind for last several years, or we can say for several hundred years. Birds show this type of movement from seasonal, from one season to other season. On a prescribed day, one may find a particular type of bird in the backyard or in the garden or in the forest, and on a prescribed day suddenly they disappear from that particular habitat. So these movements are called as migration. A migration generally is done to avoid adverse conditions. As this earth rotates, the season changes, and those birds which stay or which inhabit the northern hemisphere somewhere near poles, they face extreme cold conditions. The land is covered with snow and availability of food decreases. During this period, a big number of birds, they move from northern side to the winter southern equatorial region, where the climate is hospitable, the weather is warm, food is available. So these birds can exploit the winter food availability in the equatorial region. As the sun again rotates, the movement, because of movement of earth, the season changes, the equatorial region becomes warmer, and these birds, they go back to the northern hemisphere where the snow starts melting, the productivity increases, and the food availability also increases. These areas are generally remote areas where predation is very low, and this is the place where they can produce the next generation very successfully. So these type of movements are regularly shown by birds, and these we call as seasonal migration. The legendary birdman Dr. Salim Ali says that migration is a pendulum-like to and fro movement where the birds occupy the same area every spring to carry out nesting activities, and thereafter they tend to return to same winter ground. Bird migration is a behavior that has evolved many thousand years ago. Scientists believe that migration began to evolve when individuals that moved from one area to another ultimately produce more young than those which did not move. All birds do not take part in migration, and those which take part in migration, they show different types of migratory behavior. Migration may be classified in different ways. The seasonal migration is the migration that corresponds to the seasonal changes. It is governed by climatic factors, mainly the temperature, because in northern latitude the temperature is quite cooler during winter. The second type of migration is altitudinal migration, where birds are showing up and down movement on the mountain ranges. Mountain ranges are also covered with snow during winter, when the food availability is very less. So during winter, these birds move to the lower altitudes and they exploit the warmer climate of valleys during winter. And as the winter is over, they move to higher altitudes and exploit the melting snow, which after which the vegetation grows and the productivity increases. These types of movements are quite commonly seen in birds which inhabit Himalayan range. Another type of migration is partial migration. Partial migration is they move to certain extents, but the movement may not be that regular. So these are different types of migration. There are some species which also show longitudinal migration, that is migration from east to west and west to east. These migration is mainly with respect to the climatic conditions of wind and temperature. So among birds also different types of migratory patterns are shown. Locally also some birds show movements, and this type of movement is called as local migration. During these birds are residing in political boundaries of one particular area only, but area being vast, they show local movements from desert to forested area or forested area to other areas. So these movements are called as local movements, or these species are also called as local migratory species. India is one of the mega diversity nation, and millions of migratory birds visit India during winter. If a person visits any small water body, a person is likely to see some migratory birds. One of the most common migratory bird in the region is coot, which may be seen in thousands in a larger water body. So coot is one of the very common bird. There are some individuals of coot which stay back in India and they nest in India too, but the number of such individuals is very low compared to millions of them coming to India. Another common migratory bird is the demoiselle crane and the common crane. These cranes also visit India in thousands. One can visit northwestern part of India where thousands of them may be seen in a water body, or they may be seen flying, making a formation, or we can say formation flight at the time of dusk and dawn. The Bishnoi tribe in Rajasthan is also known to protect large number of these cranes, especially there are places where these cranes are fed, given food and protected. So cranes are one of the other common species, or two species of cranes are commonly seen during migratory season in many parts of India. Other birds include large variety of ducks. There are pintails, there are pochards like common pochard, ferruginous pochard, tufted pochards, different species of pochard which are migratory, which may be seen at the water body. There are larger ducks like grey lag geese or bar-headed geese, which are also very common in the area, and there are large number of waders like ruff, godwits, curlew, sanderlings, which are seen in the inland wetlands as well as coastal area of India. India is having large coastline as well as these in India, as it is having monsoon type of climate, large numbers of reservoirs are developed, which have again developed into a wetland ecosystem. These are all the places where migratory birds may be seen very easily during winter. Other important migratory birds which shows local movements is flamingos. It is also a beautifully colored bird which is seen in thousands at different water bodies, mainly nearer to the coastal area. So these are some of the migratory or water dependent species which are visiting India during winter. In addition, the large number of terrestrial birds are also there. There are millions of rosy pastors which come to India. There are species like wagtails which may be seen on the ground, especially when the cricket match is going on. Quite often a bird like wagtail is shown in the with the cricket. So this bird which keeps on wagging its tail is also a migratory species of bird. So different species, they visit India in large number. They are water dependent or they are terrestrial, and they may be seen easily during winters, even they may be seen in your backyard. If we look at the different techniques which are used for studying bird migration, then the earliest one and the most commonly used is the use of metal bands or rings. Metal bands or rings are put on the tarsus of the bird and these birds are released. Whoever is observing this bird in their own area, or if they come across the ring, they are supposed to inform the concerned authority. The ring on its outer side is having specific number, whereas on the inner side it is having the address of the organization which has ringed that animal. So, this is the way migration can be studied. If a bird is ringed in Russia and if that bird is coming to India, if anybody sees the bird and if anybody gets the dead bird or live bird and can read the number, then it can be, the information can be sent back to the organization and one can get the route or the information about where the bird is moving or which route the bird has taken. The second method is color marking. Color marking is mainly used for finding out local movements of birds. The birds are ringed with different colored bands. It can be red, blue, yellow, green. These marks can be seen from a distance with the help of binocular or telescope, and if the bird is near, one can see it with naked eyes too, and one can note down that you have seen this particular type of species which is having colored band. The pattern of colored band can be adjusted. There can be different combination of colors, and this information when sent back to the organizations or to the places where the information is collected, then it can also give you information how the bird is moving around. The third method is plumage dye. Certain colored dyes are used on the feathers. These dyes, like color rings, can be seen from the distance, but this dyes can be for temporary period, and temporary movement of the birds can be studied with the help of such color dyes. Other very important and modern techniques use radio tracking, satellite tracking or radar. In radio tracking, a small radio transmitter is fixed on the back of the bird. This radio transmitter produces radio waves which are then tracked by the antenna. But again, it is having limitation because how far the signal can reach. The person who follows it has to be mobile and should be able to follow the bird in different direction. But radio transmitters can be used to track the movement of birds. The most modern method is satellite tracking. In satellite tracking, a small platform transmitter terminal known as PTT is fixed on the back of the bird. Mainly this is done with larger species of birds. This PTT or platform transmitter is connected to the satellite, and the information can be tracked via satellite where the bird is moving. This is very expensive method and needs coordination between different countries too. So, satellite tracking is one of the modern method for studying bird migration. In many cases, radar also is used for tracking bird migration, especially for those birds which are passage migrants or they are considered as passage migrants, which spend some time at one particular area during their migration. So, during this time, the birds are followed through radars also. And of course, another method is direct observation. Direct observation can be at the daytime or when one person is watching birds and noting down simply that in particular area he or she has seen this many number of this particular species of birds. This can also give the idea that birds are moving in which different areas. Moon watching is also one of the important or interesting migratory a method to study migratory birds. But moon watching has limitation, because at night only a small area can be followed through the binocular or telescope, and small number of flocks can be studied, but identification can be difficult. So, these are various methods which are used for studying migration of birds. Arctic tern is a species which migrates for longest distance from northern pole to southern pole, and in many a time it migrates for long distance without stopping in between. In India, woodcock is the species which migrates for longest distance, which breeds in Himalayas during summer and moves to the southern part of India during winter. So, there are many species of birds which migrate. The species migrate in huge flocks, maybe of thousands and millions, or they may migrate in a smaller flocks of few birds together, or they can also migrate singly during migration. Migration is actually a mysterious process. The scientists are trying to find out the causes of migration, how it has evolved, and how birds are moving. During migration or just before migration, there are lots of changes which are taking place in the body of a bird. There is change in the physiology, there is change in the endocrine system, and there is deposition of fat. But migration can be studied in two ways, that is the stimulus of migration and how the birds orient and navigate themselves during migration. If we look at the stimulus of migration is believed to be the environmental clue, the regular change in the environmental clue, and the most common environmental clue is photoperiod, which does not change year after year. We all know it very well that 21st June is the longest day, and similarly 23rd December is the shortest day. There is movement of sun in the sky, and the day length increases and decreases according to this movement. This movement is perceived by birds. The change in the light intensity is perceived via eyes or maybe pineal gland, which is known to secrete hormones, and these secretion of hormones is known to, or is believed to rather, control the migratory movement. When there are changes in the secretion of hormone, centers in the hypothalamus, which is present on the lower side of the brain, are stimulated and they secrete different hormones. These hormones control the activities of glands like pituitary gland, which in turn controls activities of other endocrine gland. The endocrine hormones which are involved in this are prolactin, corticosterone, and of course the sex steroids, because in many cases when they go back or go to the northern hemisphere, they go back for breeding purpose. So, there are changes in the hormonal levels. These hormonal changes lead to a condition which is called as hyperphagia, during which the bird eat a lot. They start putting on weight, because during migration they may not get chance to take food. So, about 40% of the energy is saved either in the flight muscles or in the abdominal region. These energy in the form of fat is utilized during flight. Flying against the gravity needs lot of energy. In addition, the basal metabolic rate of bird is also higher, so more energy is required. So, before starting migratory journey Because of environmental clues, the birds start eating lot of food. In wintering grounds in India and surrounding countries, during winter the weather is hospitable and lots of food is available. So birds start feeding on this food and then they put on the weight. A condition is reached when the fats are stored in the body, adequate fats are stored in the body, and a moment comes when they have to leave the place for their breeding ground. The physiological state of the bird before migration is controlled by proximate and ultimate factors. Ultimate factors are the environmental clues, whereas proximate factors are the immediate factors like availability of food that stimulates the migratory behavior in birds. When the adequate amount of fat is stored in the body, bird reaches a state which is called as pre-migratory state, and in combination with ultimate factors which are environmental clues, the bird reaches a state which is called as Zugunru, which is also known in common language as pre-migratory restlessness. A time comes when the bird becomes restless to initiate the migratory flight. The migratory flight is initiated depending again on the environmental clue or solistic clues. The birds may use sun and moon as well as magnetic field of the earth to start the migratory flight, and this environmental clues we considered as the use of orientation and navigation by birds. The birds have ability to follow the movement of sun so that they know the direction of the sun. In addition, they use the topographical clues like hills, rivers, coastal line, wind direction and other things to start their migratory journey, and they move in a particular direction. There are some species which migrate at night time, and these species use the position of star as well as position of moon to migrate. So birds are intelligent, their brain is also very well developed, and they can use combination of all these clues at different level depending on the requirement by the situation in which they are present. So a time comes when all these clues fit into each other, and on that particular day the bird starts its migratory journey. If we take example of rosy pastor, a very common bird in our surroundings, they generally are observed to migrate on the full moon day, which comes in the Indian month of Chaitra. So that is the day. Before this day is reached, all the environmental clues are such that they start eating lot of food, their body weight increases about 40% or so, and all the hormonal conditions are such that when this day is reached, it falls somewhere in April. Because it is depending on the Indian calendar, it is not exactly one particular day in the April when this bird start moving, but it depends upon the moon, full moon, after which they start migrating. And before migrating, a large number of these birds, they gather at a particular pre-migratory roost. So couple of months in advance they start coming together, and sometimes huge roost of 40-50,000 birds may be seen in some of the cities in western area India, where you can see before sunset all of them they come together and they share the information that from where they have taken the food or where the food is available. We do not know exactly whether they are sharing the information, but they are very, very noisy when they gather at the pre-migratory roosting places. And suddenly one fine day, that is the full moon day in month of Chaitra, that they disappear, and suddenly from 50 to 60,000 birds, you may see 4 to 5,000 the next day, and 400, 500 the third day, and by 4th and 5th day all have disappeared from that particular area. So, environmental clues are used by the birds for navigation too. Orientation and navigation are crucial to the success of migratory birds. Birds are equipped with a number of tools that work together to get them where they want to go. Factors in the environment function to provide direct proximal stimulation for the physiological preparation for migration. Simultaneously, they also provide information that allows bird to navigate during migratory passage. Navigation requires knowing three aspects: current location, where the bird is located on the earth's surface; destination, where the bird has to reach after the migratory flight; and the direction of travel to get from the current location to the destination. Navigation is based on a variety of senses. It also has been shown to be based on combination of abilities like detecting magnetic field of the earth. They have magnoreceptor for the same, and use of visual landmarks as well as olfactory cues. Further, there is a strong genetic component to migration. All species do not migrate. There are certain species which migrate. So, genetic component is also equally important. This may be modified by environmental influences. Hence, in addition to using the sun, star, the landscape, the magnetic field, the earth's orientation, the genetic makeup is equally important for migration of by a species. The short explanation of this complex phenomenon is that birds find their way by using a variety of cues in a hierarchical fashion. At a time, one clue may be important, the same clue may not be important at other time. Different species may use these cues in different order of sequence. So, for one particular species, magnetic field may be is important, for other there can be the position of sun. Thus, this phenomenon of migration is a very complex process which has been practiced by many species of birds, especially those which breed or which reside in the extreme polar regions, where the area is covered with snow during winter and food availability is low. So, they move towards the southern latitudes where the atmosphere is hospitable and provides large quantity of food. And once the condition changes, they go back to the same northern latitudes where the productivity increases, lot of food is available. Because of situation conditions over there, the predation pressure is low and they can produce large number of young ones successfully without any competition and predation. So, both the situations are equally explored by this group of birds which show migratory movement at the expense of large quantity of energy, but ultimately the goal is successful breeding and use of optimum use of whatever resources are available at the both the grounds, wintering ground as well as nesting ground.